Hi, everybody. Welcome. How are you guys doing? My name is Melissa Manifests. I'm here as future editing Melissa to kind of explain a little bit about this video and what you guys are going to be seeing because this came from a live stream that I did on an app called Insight Timer. If you're interested, you can definitely click the link in my bio or just check the description of this video and I'll have all the information there. If you're interested in joining the lives live in person and asking questions and being a part of the mix, feel free to go ahead and follow me on there and you'll see the next time I go live. But this video is a video of that live stream. And so I did a couple of cuts. I have a couple of other videos coming out with different kind of portions of the same live. And so if you see a couple of rough cuts, that's the reason why. It's because I'm doing my best to put it all in a cohesive way for you guys to truly understand. But the best way of truly having all the information is to join me live. So all that being said, welcome to the video. Everything is energy. And this is the whole intention of this live, is to really talk about how, again, manifestation and calling things into your life, it's energy with energy, okay? It may feel like in our experience of reality is that it's all matter. And how can I dream of something and have it magically appear in front of me? And it's like these ideas and these beliefs around how the 3D world works in relation to how the spiritual world works. This is where I want to, or spiritual, and also to kind of like, we want to talk about the science behind it as well. But there's the science and the spiritual also too kind of go hand in hand in this situation. But we want to talk, I want to share with you guys. I want you guys at the end of this live, if you're able to be with me for the whole time or not, whatever. I do want you to understand that you are the co-creators of this universe. Okay. And whether or not it may look like that on the surface, you have the power to change anything that you do not like in this reality. In fact, the things that you do not like are showing you contrast, and they're giving you the opportunity to decide, hey, listen, this is not actually my preferred reality, but I wouldn't have known that had I not experienced this unpreferred reality. And so it's an opportunity to be able to say, okay, how can I shift my energy? How can I make changes in my life to be able to experience a different reality? How can I call a different reality in? What version of myself do I get to be? Do I get to level up to be able to experience the reality that I came here on this planet to actually experience? To get into kind of like the quantum mechanics and kind of like the foundation of reality and the basis of kind of like what this reality is, when we think about how we can manifest our desires and kind of like literally attract them, right? The law of attraction, how we can do that is because everything is energy. Okay, I know it looks like it's matter. I get it. Okay, I understand how this looks like it's matter. I understand how this looks like it's matter. I understand all of these things. I understand I'm sitting on a chair. I get it, right? However, everything is energy. And if you actually want to get into like the technical aspect of it, an atom, right? We can all agree that atoms are the building blocks of reality, right? Space, time, everything. Well, not time, but space and matter in this world, right? They're all made up of atoms, some type of different combination of atoms, right? Atoms are 99.9999% energy, or empty space, right? It's really empty space, but let's call it energy because it's really an energetic force. But if you look at it, empty, we'll use another word for, for energy would be empty, right? Because you can't see energy, even though you can experience energy. But just to kind of go off of that, 99.9999, 4 decimal points of nines, of empty space. And so if everything around us is made up, if atoms are the building blocks of our reality, then that means that everything else is also 99.9999. Did I miss a 9? 9% empty space, or energy rather, okay? So the reason why we experience things as physical matter is because of the vibration that they resonate at. Things that are physical vibrate at a lower frequency, okay? A more steady lower frequency that allows us to be able to experience them. Versus things like water, right? Which is a little bit more fluid, obviously, right? But that vibrates at a slightly higher energy than physical matter, because again, it's fluid. You can, it flows right through you, right? And then also to gases, things like that. Things like gases in the air that we actually breathe also have atoms and molecules in them, right? And so those vibrate at a higher frequency because there's more space between them. There's more places for them to go. So they vibrate a lot higher. And so we don't experience them as, you can't grab gas, right? You can't hold the air. You can try to cup your hands or whatever, but you're not actually going to you're not going to feel the sensation of holding anything because it just vibrates too high for us to be able to capture in this, again, physical body, in this physical state. And so that's why we experience energy as physical, tangible things. But if you want to get into the science of it, we're not actually touching anything, right? If anybody's seen the movie What the Bleep, it's a documentary. Is it a documentary movie? Anyways, I know it's available on, I'm not sure if it's available on the Tube of You anymore. It used to be, but I know it is available on Gaia. But anyways, the movie What the Bleep, I think it's What the Bleep Do We Know? I think that one. But it talks about how when you're bouncing a basketball, right, for example, the basketball never actually touches your hand, nor does it actually touch the ground. It's the electrons and protons are actually repelling each other. The moment that it touches, or sorry, I don't want to make the, I don't want anybody's ears to ring if you're listening to headphones. When it actually hits the ground and it touches your hand, it actually, the electrons and protons, they're repelling against each other, right? And what we're actually experiencing, the touch, is what those, the sensation of that energy, the sensation of those electrons and protons and all that stuff, right? And so that's what, if you're interested in watching that movie, it's one I would highly suggest. It's actually the movie that when I first saw it, like that was like the beginning of me really understanding the world in a different way. I saw that movie like over 15 years ago when I was in college. And I was like, what? This is crazy. But yeah, it talks a lot about how like we're not actually physically touching things. We are experiencing the sensation of these energy, like these protons and electrons. We're experiencing those reactions, but we're not actually touching these things because, again, they're not actually physical. So yeah, so basically, just to kind of go off of that, is everything in this physical reality is all made up of, again, 99.9999% nothingness, energy, right? Empty space. And so just that alone can hopefully, and again, this is science, right? So if everything is energy, this is what we mean by everything is energy, right? Reality is just 0.00001% matter, right? If you want to like really think about it, right? Because if that's what makes up an atom, then if those are the building blocks of this reality, then that must mean, right, that's what reality is. It's only 0.00001% matter. That should be exciting because then it allows us to be able to say, oh, okay, well, if it's just that amount of matter that I'm shifting, then really the work is with the energy that I'm putting out, with the energy that I'm allowing in, and things like that. So that's why when everyone says everything's energy, literally, right down to the smallest molecule, it's all energy. And imagine, right? Just to kind of put this in perspective as well. If an atom was a football field, then the matter, or the nucleus, right, would be a grain of salt in the middle of it, right? So that's another analogy to kind of put that in perspective for you, right? If anybody's ever been to a big football field, I don't know how big it is. I don't know how many. I don't watch football, but anyways, that's the best analogy that I have to kind of like really conceptualize this, because how does that even make sense? So that's the best way. So a big football field, a grain of salt in the middle of it would be the best representation of what matter is in relationship to an atom. Okay. So everything else is energy, which means we can manipulate it. Maybe manipulate's not the right word, but we can change it. We can attract it, right? Because again, we learn about the laws of energy. We learn again, like attracts like, which is the reason why law of attraction is called attraction, right? We're using these principles of attraction and this idea that we're able to manifest, right? It's not necessarily woo-woo when you understand that this world that we live in is not as tangible as we previously thought it was, right? Because if everything was like, if it was the opposite, if everything was 99.99999% matter, then it would be a lot more difficult to make things happen. It would be a lot more difficult to be able to change things, right? Because again, how are you going to move a mountain? But if it's all energy, then that kind of changes the ball game a little bit, or the football game, if you will. So that talks a little bit about kind of like, this world is more vibrational than it is physical, more of an energy than it is matter, right? So the good thing about that is that you have more of an opportunity to be able to shift things in your favor. You can also kind of think about it as like optical. There's a lot of different ways in which, so if you think about how so if that concept is still kind of like difficult to understand, how everything is energy, right? And how something vibrating at a certain speed can actually change the way you perceive it, right? That's kind of hard to imagine. Then think about a fan, right? When a fan is off, you have, I'm looking at a fan right now. I have 3 blades in my fan, okay? I think most fans have 3 blades. And I'm looking at it right now, and it's very clearly 1, 2, 3 blades, and there's a few spaces in between, right? There's probably more space in between the blades than there are physical blades in my fan. When I turn that fan on, it's spinning at such a high speed that I no longer see 3 blades anymore. All I see is one circular, blade that's going through, right? And it's the same thing about energy, okay? When things are vibrating at different energy, we perceive them differently. If reality is energy, right, then how do we make it work for us? And how are we able to shape reality? How are we able to manifest, more or less, right? Kind of like the whole point of this live. How are we able to, with this understanding that everything is energy, call things to us? How does this explain the law of attraction? How does this explain manifestation and all of these different things? So there's a couple different things that does help to explain this. One of them, 2 concepts I like to talk about together because they're very much intertwined, is one called wave-particle duality. A particle can exist as both wave and a particle at the same time. In fact, this is also called, so wave-particle duality is that understanding. It's also called superposition, meaning that yes, indeed, until it is being observed, matter, or I should say rather particles and waves, right? So a particle electron, for example, can exist as both wave and a particle until something is observing it, until it has an observer, which leads me to the observer effect. And the observer effect states that a particle can be, again, both wave and particle until you have an observer, somebody that's observing the waves in the particle, and then it decides I am a wave or I am a particle. And it's always based off of what is being measured. If you're measuring particles, they will become particles. If you're measuring waves, they will become waves. And it's not until it's not being measured, it's not until it's not being observed that it is infinite. It is both and. It is everything and, right? It's when we decide, okay, we're measuring it, we're observing it, what's going to happen? It'll give us whatever we're expecting to see. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense. And normally I do get into a little bit more detail with these, but I think more so I want to kind of explain the concepts behind them and how they relate to really manifesting your own desires, right? Because if for example, I keep touching this mic, I think it's pretty sensitive. If, for example, right, if everything exists as both particle and wave until we observe it, then that is, again, infinite potential, right? It has the infinite potential to be whatever it is that we ask of it, or that we expect of it, rather, I should say, right? Because if when we're not observing, it is everything, it is infinite, that means the potential for infinite is still always there. It doesn't change. Matter is not created nor destroyed. It doesn't change the nature of it being both particle and wave. It just decides once it's being observed, okay, I'm going to be a wave or I'm going to be a particle based off of the observer's expectations. So that's basically one of the things. It's able to be both particle and wave until we're able to make the decision, until we decide, okay, I expect to see a wave, I expect to see a particle, and we'll talk a little bit more specifically what that could look like, okay? Because when we talk about wave-particle duality, we also have to talk about, again, as I mentioned earlier, superposition. Superposition is another concept in quantum mechanics, and what superposition basically states is that, again, it could particle can be both particle and wave at the same time. In fact, until it is observed, it is both, and it will always be both until it is observed. And the explanation, the example that they use to make that into like a real life example is the Schrodinger's cat experiment. So Schrodinger was a scientist back in, I believe, the early 1900s, and he came up with this concept, or this thought experiment rather, of how can you take this superposition concept and how can you turn it, or how can you make it relatable for this world that we live in today, right? Particles are both wave and particle at the same time. What does that even mean? How can that even translate into reality as we understand it today? Right? Because if I have an apple in my hand, when I look away and I come back, it's not going to be a banana, right? That's not how reality works. So how does this make sense? How can it be both at the same time? And so the thought experiment is this, okay? For those of you who know me, it's not my favorite thought experiment because it has to do with cats, and I have a cat and I love my cat. But anyways, so the thought experiment is this. If you have a cat and you put it in a box, and inside of the box is a mechanical trigger, that there's a 50-50 chance of it expelling a toxic chemical that will unfortunately make the cat not be alive anymore. And if you put that cat in that box, so again, just to kind of set the scene, there's a box, and that box has a mechanical thing on it where if you open the box, there's a 50-50 chance of it expelling this toxic chemical that would make you open up the box to a cat that's no longer alive. Or if it doesn't go off, the 50-50 chance of it not going off, then the cat will then be alive in that situation, okay? So that experiment basically states that until that box is opened, that cat is living in superposition. That cat is both dead and alive at the very same time because it exists in infinite possibility. There's no observer. If the box is closed, and imagine that this is a box that, the cat can still breathe in, right? But it's completely closed and you have no access to it. There's no way of hearing, smelling, or seeing if there's a cat in there alive or not, right? Imagine that there's just no possible way of you knowing until you open that box what you'll get. What superposition states is that cat, again, is both dead and alive at the same exact time until you open that box and you observe, and you will find whatever reality that you have in front of you. And that will be the reality that you're living in at that time, right? That will be your observable reality. So that's what superposition talks about, right? So just to kind of go back, wave duality basically states that both a particle can be both wave and particle, right? It's not restricted to being just a particle or just a wave. It can be both. That's wave-particle duality. Superposition basically states that it not only can be both, it is both at the same exact time until somebody is observing it. Until there is an observer, it is both. It is any possibility and all possibilities. In fact, if there was a third possibility for that box, right? I said 50-50, or that's the original experiment, 50-50 chance. If there was a third possibility, that possibility would also be there as well. That would be the next possibility, okay? So that's really the whole kind of idea behind wave-particle duality and superposition. So now if we talk about the observer effect talks about how when you observe, that is not only making infinite possibility turn into one, right? You're not only saying, okay, if I'm observing, it's a wave or a particle, but as I mentioned earlier, what you expect to see is going to be what you observe. For the same way that when the scientists were observing the particles in the double slit experiment, which is where they came up with these concepts and they kind of discovered what quantum mechanics was and all the craziness behind it. When they were expecting to see waves, they saw waves. When they were expecting to see particles, they saw particles. Okay? So not only does the observer effect dictate whether something exists in superposition or not, it also influences what comes out as a result of that. So, going back to the Schrödinger cat experiment, if in your heart and spirit, if there was a coherence between your mind, body, and spirit, and there was no reality that you were willing to live in, that when you opened that box, that cat was no longer alive, then every time you open that box, the cat would be alive. Because now what you're doing is you're collapsing the infinite possibilities into one. You are saying, I decide that this cat is going to be alive when I open this box, right? There's a 50-50 chance. Until I open it, it lives in superposition. It is both dead and alive. However, I am the observer, and I am deciding that when I open this box, and there's no doubt in my mind that when I open this box, I will see an alive cat. So that's the other aspect of it. That's the observer effect. Okay? So we have what science is already sharing with us. Science is saying that things can be both and, right? If the smallest particles, again, the building blocks of this reality, behave in this way, then that means everything behaves in this way. Every single thing behaves in this way. And there's nothing that is excluded from it because everything is made out of electrons, protons, atoms, molecules, things like that all behave in this manner, in this way. And so if that's the case, then it will work with literally anything. The only obstacle is the observer, is us, is the decision to collapse these infinite realities into one. And saying, instead of, leaving it up to chance, leaving it up to whatever, playing an active role and saying, no. Like, this is not only my desired reality, but I refuse any other reality that is not this. I will not experience another reality because this is my reality. This is what I choose to be able to experience. Okay. And it could be, I don't want to say it could be a decision because at the end of the day, as we talked about earlier, it could be attached, the experience that you're having could be attached to your subconscious beliefs. Okay. We have a conscious brain. We have a conscious mind that allows us to be able to think, a critical mind rather. Our critical mind lives in our conscious mind. But we have our subconscious mind, which takes up, for the majority of us, 95% of our day is we are living in the subconscious mind, okay? Between the actions that we take, right? When we brush our teeth, again, the things we don't think about. When you brush your teeth, most of us brush their teeth with the same hand every single day. We also mostly start at the same spot and go through the same motions and blah, blah, blah. Most of us, again, if you drive, you get in your car the same way. You have the same routine of how you kind of set your whole, maybe you check your mirrors or whatever, maybe you don't, but you do the same thing more or less every time. When you get into bed, when you get out of bed. Most of everybody subconsciously does what you've always done before. That's your subconscious brain leading you throughout life. Because again, if the subconscious brain exists for a reason, if we didn't have that, then imagine every moment thinking about every action that you take. Breathe, 1 step, 2 step, and then how do I drive? And to be thinking about all of these things doesn't make any sense. But we all remember the time when we have to learn something, right? For example, driving a car. If you don't drive a car, then riding a bike, right? Or if you've never done that, then something else, some other new thing that you've done. You're present. You're in that moment. I remember when I first started driving, I couldn't even have the radio on. No. Can't have a distraction. Mirrors, look left and right. Is my foot on the right pedal? You know what I mean? All of these things, we're paying more attention to it because we're now in our critical conscious mind. Because we have to do that until it becomes routine and until the subconscious mind can kind of take it over and then take it off of our plate. Which is why now when I'm in the car, I'm singing, I'm dancing, I'm driving, I'm being safe. Don't you guys worry about that. I don't get too crazy. But I'm able to do all of those things, whereas before when I first started driving, no radio, don't even talk to me. I'm driving here. So the subconscious mind plays a role. And it's helpful. We want the subconscious mind. Yes, it's helpful. I don't want to have to think about driving every time I drive. I don't want to think about walking every time I walk. I don't want to think about brushing my teeth every time I brush my teeth. I want to leave up that free space to think about other things. However, it doesn't only put into, how do I say this? It doesn't only take off the things off of our plate that we do physically. It also can repeat a lot of the same thoughts. At this time of day, Melissa tends to think about this. So at this time of day, guess what's going to happen? These thoughts are going to start to come in and I'm going to either pay attention to them, put my energy towards them, or I'm not. And so it really, as much as you can possibly create a routine of, if your life is 99.9% routine, then it's 99.9% you're living your life in this subconscious mind. It's not until, that's why when we go on vacations, time kind of behaves differently. We can feel like the vacation is either really going really fast, or we can feel like really immersed in this vacation, right? We can feel more present in this moment. when you're on vacation, because again, it's new. It's a nuance, right? Your brain doesn't have a program for this already. It's brand new. So the more new things that we do, the more neurotransmitters we're creating, the more connections in our brain we're creating. And it's always going to benefit us. It's always going to give us an opportunity to be able to step outside of our subconscious mind and get more into our thinking critical mind. Especially if our subconscious mind doesn't serve us, right? If the programs that are in the subconscious mind are not actually serving our purpose, then it's really great to do those things, to learn new things, to go on vacation, or to, again, like just try different things, do more things that are nuanced, or even doing things that you would normally do differently, right? A lot of people, especially in I think this was mentioned in Atomic Habits. I'm not positive, but I do know a lot of people have talked about, as I mentioned earlier, when you brush your teeth, if you brush your teeth with the opposite hand, the non-dominant hand, or whatever opposite hand you're used to brushing your teeth with, now you're taking something that was subconsciously in your mind, and now you're thinking about it. Oh, how did I do this again? What's 1, 2, 3, 4? Like, how do I do this on the other hand? And when you do that, now you're training your mind to step out of the subconscious so often. You're training your mind to say, hey, I want to be present. I want to be here, right? The more that you do nuanced things, the more present you are in that moment. So, if you find yourself, and again, we love comfort. We are creatures of comfort. We love to be comfortable. I know, at least for myself, being a teacher, a lot of students, when it was time to switch up the seats, there was such resistance towards it. Like, no, I've always sat here by the corner. This is my spot. You know what I mean? And not even so much if it was the fact that who you had around you. It was just the fact that I was moving your seat. I was creating change, and we love comfort. We don't like change as human beings. We love to be, comfort equates to safety for us in a biological evolutionary way. If we're comfortable, then we're safe, right? Our nervous system loves to be comfortable and safe. But in order for us to grow, in order for us to be able to achieve what we want to achieve, we have to step outside of that comfort zone. So if you can train yourself to be uncomfortable in situations that you would normally be comfortable, for example, brushing your teeth with a different hand, that's like a low risk, low impact thing that you can do that will make a really big difference. Yeah, exactly. Creatures of habit. Exactly. Yeah. So if you can do little things like that, again, it doesn't have to be, go take a cooking class. It doesn't have to be learn a whole new skill. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. It could be, what do I do every single day that I can do a little bit differently? Maybe I'll take a different route to work. You know what I mean? Maybe I will get out of the bed in a different side of the bed. If you share the bed with a partner, maybe you'll say, hey, let's switch up our sides. Whoa. I know a lot of us were like, oh, I don't know. I like my side. I have my side for a reason. But if we do things like that, then we're training our brain to step outside of the subconscious. And then we're able to think more critically about what's going on in our lives. We're able to have more control over, what we're thinking in that moment. Or even more so importantly, we're in the present moment. And we're not in the subconscious mind as much. All right, bye guys. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something. And again, if you are interested in joining in on the lives and asking questions and just seeing the whole thing from beginning to end, then please feel free to join me on Insight Timer. Again, that's Insight Timer. And you can follow me, Melissa Manifests. You can just search for my name in the search bar, and you will find me. And you can go ahead and follow me and see when I'm going to be going live next. You can also message me there. And if you have any requests for other topics and things like that, I'm definitely always open to hearing what you guys are interested in learning more about. So with that, thank you so much for joining in on this video. I hope you did like it, and I hope that you do come watch another video or follow me on Insight Timer. Bye guys. Thank you.